Hello, everybody, and welcome back to a new episode of the Global Awareness Report. I did not upload last week because there really wasn't a whole lot to report on, but there is enough to report on the past, 2 weeks now, I guess. So we're gonna make another episode here, and there's quite a bit to report on than last week. So let's get into it. We're going to start off with Ukraine, of course, and we're going to go from there. So, about this bridge near Kherson, the bridge wasn't actually destroyed, but it has been disabled and is no longer operational. That I guess there was the bridge being destroyed ended up being fake news, unfortunately, but the bridge is disabled. It's no longer operational. And the Russians have been using pontoon bridges to get supplies across and to transport vehicles. You know, so it has not been destroyed. Apologies for the inaccurate information, but it has been corrected. There has not been There's been no updates on the Kherson front besides artillery shelling and battles, but no real ground has been taken, so there is pretty much no action that I can report on the map that would be interesting. Ukraine, I think, has continued to strike this dam in order to disable the road across it, but it has not worked. I'm fairly certain the Russians are still using this dam right here as a bridge to get supplies across the river. And that's pretty much it for the Kherson front. We actually are going to move down to Crimea because there was a satellite imagery taken of Russian airplanes being destroyed. About 11 military aircraft have been destroyed, and the rest we don't know if how damaged they are, if they're repairable at this air base right here in Crimea. Ukraine has officially denied the attack, that they were the ones responsible for the attack, but they have made posts on social media and what have you in order to mock the Russians, saying that Crimea is not a good tourist destination because of this, like mocking the Russians. So maybe they had something to do with it. Russia says that it was just an accident, but I personally believe that this might have been some kind of saboteur operation because the videos don't show any evidence that it was a missile strike, and civilians around the area didn't say that they heard any missiles or anything like that. So I'm not sure exactly what caused the explosions, but this seems to be more than just an accident. I'm not sure what could have happened to have caused all of this damage. So I think the fact that the Ukrainians were consistently mocking the Russians about this, and I think that is an indicator that they have had some kind of responsibility. I personally think it was some kind of saboteur group, some kind of special forces, or maybe that's just a rumor the Ukrainians are spreading in order to keep the Russians on their toes, making them think that there are saboteurs around. Maybe it really was an explosion. I really have no idea, But I think the most likely option probably is saboteurs. But then again, it could just be as likely that it is an accident. But I personally think it's saboteurs. Let me know what you think it could have been in the comments. I think they're all, whether it be a missile strike, an airstrike, saboteurs, an accident. I think they're all very likely, but I think the most likely is a saboteur attack. So we are going to move up north here. I believe this was. I forgot to add the date here. I believe this was not too long ago, just a few days ago. Ukraine has captured this very small village here, Shevchenko. As you can see, it's not even. It's very hard to find any houses. Even it's very small. Here's a building right here. I'm not sure why this is listed as a thing on Google Earth, but it says it's a village. And most sources say that it is a village. Most maps, not just Google, list this as some kind of a settlement. So Ukraine has reported that they have recaptured this settlement. And I don't see why they would lie about recapturing such a small and fairly and pretty insignificant place. So I'm going to say that it is true. The fact that they directly reported that they, have liberated it and that they have recaptured it. Liberated is the word that they used. So I'm guessing that it's accurate, but it is quite insignificant. But we're going to mark it on the map anyways. Moving north to Pisky. The Russians have fully captured the entire town. Most maps show this, although Ukraine still says that there's fighting going on in the city. But pretty much everybody says that it's under Russian control. And the Russians have been using this to a attack towards Privomanske up here, and they are also attacking pretty much every location around Pisky in order to try to break out from this area. Similar to what happened at Popasna, which happened a few months ago, and that led to the Russians being able to take Lysychansk and Severodonetsk. Popasna was quite far back. Right here. Popasna is quite a big city. It's much bigger than Pisky, but this breakthrough right here, they were able to use this to... They were to use Popasna in order to come down to the power plant from the north, or from the south, I should say, and to the north towards Lysychansk and Severodonetsk. It was a major breakthrough, so they're trying to recreate this in a miniature sort of way. Try and take all of these towns and push as far west from Donetsk as possible in order to prevent the Ukrainians from using artillery to bombard the city. It would appear that the Russians' attack on Andriivka, which was going on, Andriivka is this city right here. It is a Ukrainian fortress. It's been fortified since the end of since the ceasefire at the end of 2014, 2015. It has been it's been massively fortified. It's a very tough nut to crack for the Russians, and it's a very good defensive position for Ukraine and very strategic. It's right next to Donetsk. So the Russians need to capture the city, but that will be very difficult. And I believe they've sort of stopped their attack near Andrivka and focused south towards Biscay and this area down here. So, moving north, the Russian forces have captured Trainave and Halsidorzov. This was on August 6th and August 8th. They've captured these two towns west of the power plant and have been pushing on Zaitseve and Dacha and Kodima. They've been pushing on these three towns, attacking these three very important towns, because if these towns fall, here we go, we can see the road now. They can take this highway right here. They'll be able to push towards this area and cut off any support from Krasa. Oh, I don't understand why these town names have to be so hard to pronounce. But this Konstantinivka, I believe, yeah. From Konstantinivka, they can push. The Ukrainians can send supplies down to Bakhmut, and they can send it to the east. So if they can cut this road off here, they can attack Bakhmut from the south, and also just take more and more of Donetsk Oblast, which is their main goal right now. So it's important for the local tactical situation that they capture Kodima. And then they can push towards Zaitseve from the south, and then they can take that, and then they'll have a direct route towards the south of Bakhmut. So the Russian forces have actually pushed into the outskirts of Bakhmut from the east, and they have I believe it was the Wagner private military company that is in this area right here, pushing into Bakhmut directly, a direct attack on Bakhmut. So if they want this attack to succeed and to actually push and take major parts of Bakhmut, like the residential area down here, they need to take these towns, including Zaitsev, in order to assist the attack from the south. So that's why these towns are very important. It's in order to assist the attack on Bakhmut. In Solidar, the Russians have pushed into the city and have captured this mine right here and this factory, and are pushing up towards through the city. They haven't. There are some reports that they've reached around this area where my mouse cursor is. Around this area right here. There are reports that they've reached that area, but those are just rumors. And I believe that's all for Solidar. The Russians are continuing to push this position between Siversk and Bakhmut, and if they can take Solidar, they can cut Bakhmut off from the north, and they can push from Solidar towards the north of Bakhmut, and that's just another angle they can attack this very important city from. So again, another very important town, although Solidar is a hard city to capture. It's a very good defensive location because it is vertical, so it's not like a big circle-like town. It's very much straight, I suppose. It has one direction, so it's hard to attack from the fields into and flank the city. It'd be hard to do that, so they are just having to push through the city itself, and that is time consuming. A quick correction, this is more of a quick correction in the map. Sometime during July, this town was taken by the Russians, and I appear to have missed it. I'm not sure exactly when it was taken in July, but most maps show this town under Russian control. Most maps that I use as sources have this town under Russian control. So I'm going to mark it under Russian control. I'm not sure about Bilogorivka down here. I think quite a few maps say that it's actually under Ukrainian control, so I'm going to leave this under Ukraine. I'm going to leave this under Russia, and next week if there's any updates about these towns, I will of course report on it. Sperne is, I still think, I am less confident that is under the control of the Russians. I am not sure, because Ukraine has consistently said that this town is under their control. Like day after day after day, they have consistently said Russia has shelled, Sperne, Russia has attacked Sperne, like day after day, consistently saying that it's under their control. For a long time, for weeks, they've said this, so, and a lot of maps have this under Ukrainian control, so I really don't know. I might change this to the Hyhorivka situation where it's sort of, a no man's land. No, I don't know what control it's under. I might do that, but for now I'm going to leave it under the Russian control, although that might change. We finally have an update at Verokonyemske, which is a majority of the town is under Ukrainian control. Finally, we've had maps been updated and reports come out, and I believe the Russians themselves have said about half of the town is under their control. So this is what the front line looks like according to the Institute for the Study of War, pretty much. That half the town is under Russian control. So Ukraine controls about half of the town. Russia controls the other half of the town here. However, it can't really be called a town anymore, since I'm fairly certain almost all of these buildings have been destroyed because of artillery. That's most of these small towns have been destroyed. Pretty much it's war. Most places are on the front line are destroyed, so. No updates about Hyhorivka, obviously. I still don't know who really controls it. I might leave it under Ukrainian control. I might give it Ukrainian control. I'm considering it, because most maps show it under Ukrainian control. Although the pro-Russian sources say it's Russian, and even the Institute for the Study of War, which is a Western source, says that it's under Russian control. So I really have no idea who controls the town at this point. Moving onwards, I believe I believe there's no other changes. Moving onwards, the Ukrainians have captured this tiny settlement north of this very big forest right here. According to the Russians abandoned the town and weren't forced out of it, and after the Ukrainians entered the town, they bombarded the position and killed a lot of them, although I don't know how true that is. But Ukraine is under the control of this town. For now, at least, the Russians says that they will mount a counteroffensive and try to take the town back, so But for now, this tiny settlement, which is very important if you want to be able to attack into this forest, which is a very important forest. Whoever is a very strategic position to control this forest, it's very important to control for either side. Obviously next week, if there's enough to report on and I make a video, then, we'll know what happens here, if the Russians end up recapturing it or not. Moving on, according to Russian sources, the town of Udi has been captured by Russian forces. Although most Ukrainian sources say that the town is under Ukrainian control, and pro-Ukrainian sources and Western sources say that the town is under Ukrainian control, Rybar is quite accurate. Although obviously Rybar makes some mistakes. The pro-Russian source Rybar, he is fairly accurate and usually reports on stuff if he can, actually really confirm it. He rarely reports on rumors or preliminary information or anything like that. So he's quite a trustworthy source, although he is obviously pro-Russian. So if there are any updates about this or new information comes out, then I'll obviously update the map. But it is my opinion that the Russians have captured this town. There are also reports that Russia has captured this town, which they initially had control over but lost it. But I think Rybar has also reported that it's under their control, though I'm not sure. I've heard rumors of some town over here being captured, although I'm not entirely sure what it was. I'll have to go ahead and check. So after this video goes live, the map may have been updated or may have not been updated. We'll have to see if the rumors are true, if I can confirm whether Russia has likely captured a town up here. Alright, I believe that is everything. Let me make sure I didn't miss anything. No. I think that's everything. Alright, we're going to move on to the geopolitical report here, and I'll try to keep it a bit short. I want these videos to be at most 30 minutes, so we're going to speed through this here a little. The EU has proposed to lift pressure on Iran's Revolutionary Guards in order to revive the Iran nuclear deal. Europe's president to revive the nuclear deal with world powers would blunt American sanctions against Iran, revive against Iran's Revolutionary Guards and pave the way for Tehran to avoid further scrutiny of suspected atomic sites, according to excerpts from a draft. The text reviewed by Politico. Yeah, this is a Politico article. So the EU is wanting to work on a deal with Iran to revive the nuclear deal, which was a deal in order to, well, the purpose of it was to make sure Iran wasn't using their nuclear facilities to make nuclear bombs, and make a deal with Iran to make sure that they didn't get any nuclear bombs. Whether or not this was effective or not, or a good deal, I'm not sure. I try to keep my opinions to the minimum on this, and I am not very informed on the Iran deal in the first place, so if you were to get my opinion, it would be uninformed. But the EU has tried to resurrect the deal, which I believe America is not in favor of. This article states that it would blunt American sanctions, so I do not believe I do not believe that the Americans are very happy about this. So it would appear that the European Union is drifting apart from America in this case, which they have been doing in recent years. Over the past, I think, probably ever since Donald Trump was elected, the EU has moved away from America. And even now that Joe Biden is president, they are still moving away. I think it's just inevitable. It's sort of a geopolitical inevitability that the EU becomes its own foreign policy, gets its own foreign policy independent of that of Washington. I'm not saying that the EU will unify into a federal state or something like that. I honestly doubt that it will. In my opinion, I don't think that that's going to happen. I don't think that they have the ability to do that. That would be a major political undertaking. It would be unprecedented if something like that were to happen in human history. So I doubt that it will federalize into one state, but that doesn't mean that these countries aren't going to band together and, try to stake out a place in the world for themselves. So I believe that the EU, being desperate for an alternative to Russian gas, is trying to go to Tehran and try to go to Tehran, I believe is how you pronounce it, and try to get oil from them, try to get natural gas from them, in order to become more independent from Russian gas. At the same time, them acting at the same time they are also sort of splitting apart from Washington in some ways. Although they are still very close with Washington, I'm not saying that the EU will get its own independent foreign policy tomorrow, but I think over the next decade we will see a sort of split from America in a lot of ways. Speaking of natural gas and everything, the German government, I believe, is urging its citizens and companies to reduce the consumption of natural gas. The German economic minister said, I forgot to put the date on this, unfortunately, but this was, I think, about a week ago. Uh, yeah, so they are going to reduce. Not they are urging their citizens and businesses to reduce heating, to keep the heat at a minimum, to try to keep it only around 66 Fahrenheit. It said 19 degrees Celsius, no higher than 19 degrees Celsius. Obviously, Germany is one of the most dependent countries in Europe on Russian natural gas. They're still buying natural gas through Nord Stream and everything like that, so they're doing everything they possibly can to rid themselves of Russian natural gas, but it is very, very difficult because if they rid themselves of the Russian natural gas, they won't be able to heat their country, and the government will not be able to sustain enough approval rating, and new people who are willing to buy Russian gas will be elected, and there'll be mass unrest. But Germany's foreign policy, the EU's foreign policy, is against Russia, so they need to strike a balance between between slowly cutting themselves off from Russian natural gas whilst at the same time still being able to heat their country. It is a balancing act, and I think that's the main way to interpret this as a balancing act for the Germans. I think that's how the German government should be looking at it. How can they balance out the needs of their people with their foreign policy goals? I'm not saying these foreign policy goals are right or wrong, but that is what their goals are. So, if I personally were the German chancellor, I would try to, and that was my goal, was to reduce Russian natural gas consumption. I would do it slowly over the course of the next year. I wouldn't try to rush and to stop buying natural gas, but I would just slowly stop buying it and do everything I can. I would spend a lot of money if it were my goal to um, build liquid natural gas ports, which Germany is doing, but that takes a long time to do. So we'll have to see what happens if Germany ends up caving on their foreign policy goals and just buys the Russian gas, or they risk the government collapsing and a new government taking power through mass unrest because their citizens can't get enough natural gas. We'll have to see what happens. It is a very, it's quite the dire situation for Germany. Moving on to Middle Eastern politics, we're going to try to wrap this up soon. Israel and Turkey have restored, or will restore, full diplomatic relations after about 4 years since Erdogan took power. Israel and Turkey have had a split in their relations. They've had a lot of negative relations since Erdogan took power for numerous reasons. One being the natural gas disputes in the Eastern Mediterranean, and another being Erdogan's support of Palestine. But now the two countries have exchanged ambassadors and are going to try to restore their diplomatic relations. So this is a big, this is very important for the regional politics because Israel and Turkey are some of the most powerful nations in the Middle East. We have I guess you could call them the big four of Middle Eastern politics: Israel, Saudi Arabia, Iran, and Turkey. Each having their own separate foreign policy from one another. So this is good for regional stability, and this is good for diplomacy. So hopefully Turkey can warm its relations with the rest of the Middle East in order to, prevent any more wars in this region, because the last thing this region needs now is another conflict erupting. So the more diplomatic relations that are restored, the better for the people of the region. And moving on, I believe that we're going to move on to China. Xi Jinping has plans to meet with Joe Biden. There's planning to meet them here during the G20, which is taking place in Indonesia, I believe. Yeah. So Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping will be attending the G20, which is set to take place in Indonesia in person. So this is quite a big deal because I believe this will be like the first time like Joe Biden will have met with Putin and Xi Jinping in quite a while. Maybe even for the first time in person. I'm not entirely sure. Although I don't think so. I think they've met each other in person before. But this is we're gonna be watching the G20 what goes on there, and if any major news comes from them, I'll obviously report. If any major news comes from the G20 meeting, but they are he's planning a foreign trip, and that includes meeting Biden. So, obviously after the major incident surrounding Taiwan and the Speaker of the House's visit, it appears that China is trying to, I suppose, restore some of the lost relations, lost opinion with America and I guess with the world. A show of force and then, I guess, calming down to talk business, maybe. Something like that. I believe that the military exercises were mainly for domestic approval, probably, as well as also almost just as important to show China's strength to the wider world. But I think domestic approval had a lot to do with it. One last quick little thing right here. For the fourth time in a year, on August 3rd, Peru's prime minister has resigned. I forgot to report on that I guess last 2 weeks ago. So, yeah, I just wanted to point that out here. Even though Peru is not a super important country when it comes to geopolitics, the fact that this is the fourth time in a year a prime minister has resigned goes to show the unstable situation in the country. So it's important to watch out for this kind of stuff, because if something were to happen in Peru, that would obviously that would have quite a wider impact on the on South America as a whole, which is not an often talked about part of the world, but it is still just as important. It is still important to notice what's going on down here. So I believe that that is everything here. I believe I haven't missed anything. No, it looks like that's it. Alright, well, thank you for watching the Global Awareness Report. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and I know this video is longer than I wanted it to be, but I tried to do this as quick as I could. So, thank you for watching, thank you for sitting through this, and goodbye.